people, on the other hand, were largely useless. Weight for weight, the slag would be worth more. I can't disagree with that sometimes. Hello, welcome to Sound and Fairy Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of A Life for the Stars by James Blish. This is a book that came out in 1962 from Arrow Press. It's a classic sci-fi. So this is one of my classic sci-fi book reviews. This means you will get a mini spoiler-free review, a full spoiler synopsis, and my classic sci-fi bingo. An interesting but light speed coming-of-age novel. A Life for the Stars raises some interesting talking points but doesn't spend enough time really fleshing them out. But it's fun. What's it about? A Life for the Stars. The natural resources of the world have long been exhausted, and city after city goes okie, lifts itself off the face of the earth to earn its living as a migrant worker among the stars. Now the spin daisies that will take Scranton, Pennsylvania up into outer space are warming up. A last patrol makes sure the city perimeter is clear. He didn't know it yet, but for the redneck boy watching cautiously from the bushes, this was to be the first day of a new and very different life. I really like this copy. It's very faded, but the cover is really pretty. Anyway. Yes, this book is set in Scranton, the same place The Office was set, I believe. But, did the Dunder Mifflin Paper Code go off into space too? Yeah, I have watched The Office. I don't watch a ton of TV, but, and I hate, embarrassment movies, like Meet the Parents. I can't stand that. But The Office worked for me because Michael Scott was embarrassing, but he was not embarrassed by himself, so you didn't feel that, vicarious embarrassment. I also really only like workplace comedies. Anyway, back to this. So this book is not a comedy. It's very short and follows this poor boy who is press-ganged into joining the city that's literally taking off into the sky and into the universe. He just gets stolen, essentially, from his home. His brother and sisters have no idea what happens to him, and he never gets to tell them. Apparently there's no mail system, I guess, from space. The reason they do this is because they need people to work in the slag mines. So he escapes that, though. He does not have to work in the slag mines. And we get to see what it's like on these various floating cities in space as he does move around to a couple of them. This is actually part 2 of a series, but apparently they are, connected, but you don't need the stories to connect, I guess, aside from taking place on these spaceship flying citadels. One reviewer, because I was kind of curious what other people thought of this, obviously, said that the first book was very scientifically focused, but this one had a sort of adventure quality to it, almost as if it's for younger readers, and I would agree with that. This is definitely a book a younger, it feels like it's aimed at a 16-year-old. There's no real violence, aside from Chris's dog being killed off page, which was not necessary, but at least they didn't describe it. I didn't even realize the dog was dead until Chris kept bringing it up. And then the main character is a young man. He's growing up. It's a Bildungsroman almost. He's all of 18 when the book ends, so I guess he's around 14 or 15 when it starts. It's fun. I really enjoyed it. The ideas Blish has that aren't fleshed out are interesting talking points, including some really prophetic ideas about the nature of AI. I thought that was fascinating. We get a bit of politics and future culture too, but the book moves at a very disjointed pace. It's almost vignette-like, so almost nothing feels really fleshed out kind of character-wise. Even an extra 20 pages in the book would have helped this, and 50 would have for sure. As, while Chris is fine as a character, he's not particularly memorable, and the ending was not a big surprise. Still, it was fun. I enjoyed it. So, I'm going to give you a spoiler-filled overview of the entire plot. This book's not super funny, but because sometimes I have some wild stuff to say. I don't think there's many wild things in this, but whatever. So Chris is eking out a living with his brother and sisters when he goes to watch Scranton take off and is press-ganged into joining the journey. He escapes the slag work by lying to the boss and saying that he was studying astronomy. They made him an apprentice, but he's quickly over his head. As such, he kind of hides out in the storage units. But when he gets a chance to offload some passengers onto another spaceship city, so he takes it and he ends up in New York City. New York is better because they place him with a foster family. One of his parents is a cop too, and he goes to school, so he's kind of got a bit of a leg up there, thankfully, from his old position. One day he overhears some Russians at the docks making nefarious plots. Of course, he trades his knife to one in order to drive their little runabout, as oh, can I give it a shot? And the guy's like, sure, I guess. But he decides instead to kind of abduct them and take them to city headquarters. Given he's 15, they capture him and lock him up, and with his foster dad, who has also already been captured. The book tells us that the dad had been kidnapped off the streets a few days back, but it said it in such a passing manner that it could have actually been missed. I was like, Wait, what? Anyway, his dad is pissed because he and his fellow cop, who was also captured, already had a plan to escape. They make Chris wait while they enact their plan, which was very anticlimactic. Chris gets in trouble, but the entire thing makes him more inquisitive, so he keeps asking the forefathers, the ship's omnipresent AI, random questions about history and stuff. A little time later, due to his aptitude for learning and being from Scranton, the mayor asks him to listen in on transmissions from a planet whom they think has been taken over by Scranton to ascertain if that's true. So essentially, like, Scranton, I guess, has, like, they can dock on planets and, like, do exchanges and stuff, but I guess they docked and were like, we're staying. And so, obviously, the New York is like, we gotta help them. I guess because of trading and stuff. Anyway, so Chris, it turns out this is true, so Chris sneaks onto Scranton when they approach to kind of, I guess, do some kind of treaty or something, and he talks to the guy who is doing the taking over, the guy who actually happened to press gang him, what a coincidence, and convinces him to stand down. New York cops take out the aggressors, and Chris turns 18 a couple days later, wherein he's given the job as city manager. That's how the book ends. Yeah, so this book is fine. It's got some great lines. I'm going to read them to you because they're really fun. So one is, people, on the other hand, were largely useless. Weight for weight, the slag would be worth more. I can't disagree with that sometimes. Another good line. This is very long. I'll just read the last part of, like, there's like 8 or 9 semicolons in this huge paragraph. And watching the rockets of the rich howl remotely through the highest reaches of the indifferent sky. I thought that was cool. And one more, which is my favorite line of all because it's so funny. All around them, their younger schoolmates seemed to be opening into talents with the violence and unpredictability of popcorn. The violence and unpredictability of popcorn. I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, so onto my classic sci-fi bingo. This will not be very long because there's really not a lot in this thing. I mean, I say that every time and then I talk forever. So, I mean, if you have a bingo about things I say, there you go. Okay, so outdated science. I'm going to change this. I haven't changed it. I might have changed it for this video. I might have forgotten, but I'm going to change it to outdated concepts because I think that that's a bit broader and allows me to talk about some more things. So one of these is help wanted ads in the Sunday paper. Yeah, we don't have those anymore, I don't think. At least not where I live. We don't even get the Sunday paper. There's some other great stuff here that's super fun given the years mentioned. It's really long, but I'm going to read it to you because it's really cool. The exploration of the solar system was at first primarily the province of the military, who alone could demand the enormous sums of money necessary for space travel under rocket power, which is essentially a brute force method of propulsion directly dependent upon how much power is thrown away. Thanks for that. The highest achievement of this phase was the construction of a research and observation station upon Proserpina 2, the second satellite of the most remote of all the planets from Sol. Proserpina Station, I can't say it, was begun in 2016. It was, however, still not completed when it was abandoned temporarily 28 years later. Okay, we have some time. The reasons for the abandonment and all other solar system colonies at this time may be found in the course of contemporary terrestrial politics, under the relentless pressure of competition from the USSR, still standing in 2016, and its associated states. The Earth's Western culture had undertaken to support a permanent war economy under the burden of which its traditional libertarian political institutions were steadily eroded away. By the beginning of the 21st century, it was no longer realistically possible to see any difference between the rival cultures, although their outward forms of government continued to be called by different names. Both were police states, in which the individual citizen has lost all right to jurisdictional defense, and both operated under a totally controlled economy. In the West, the official term for this form of public policy was anti-communism. In the East, it was called anti-fascism, and both terms were heavily laden with mob emotion. The facts of the matter, however, were that neither state was economically either fascist nor communist, disagree, and that as economic systems, neither fascism nor communism had ever been tried in recorded terrestrial history. At this time, an attempt was made to settle the rivalry between the two power blocks by still another personal pact between the respective leaders. This took place in 2022, and a subsequent cold peace provided little incentive for spaceflight. In 2027, oh my god, the president was assassinated, and the Russian president proclaimed himself premier and president of United Earth. How does that happen? However, he was assassinated himself in 2032. During the same year, an underground Western group calling itself Hamiltonians succeeded in escaping from the solar system in a large number of small, spin-powered crafts. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of other stuff, and then the last thing I'll read is, the consolidation of the state proceeded rapidly, and historians generally agree that the fall of the West must be dated no later than the year 2105. So there's a bunch of theories there for you. I thought that was interesting, given the time period today. Spaceship blows up. No. No social changes. No sexy female scientists. Cool aliens. It's not going to get a check mark, but we learned these aliens for literally 1 second. In the meantime, the interstellar exiles continue to consolidate new planets and to jump from star to star. In 2289, one such expedition made its first contact with what proved to be the planet of vegan tyranny. An interstellar culture which, we now know, had ruled most of this quadrant of the galaxy for 8 to 10,000 years and was still in the process of expanding. The vegans were quick to see potential rivals even in these unorganized and badly supplied colonists and made a concerted effort to stamp out all the colonies. I just like how they were called the vegans. I thought that was really funny. Where are we now? Ancient ruins and tech? No generation ship. Yes, these flying cities would definitely be considered generation ships. AI and robots. So AI is actually a big part of this book. It basically, so there are flying cars that are autonomous, all this stuff like that. But also the forefathers AI kind of machine runs the entire city, and they actually like ask it for approval on things like that. And I thought that was really kind of where we're going almost. And it also retains like all the information from the past, and so you can basically go into like a little phone boothy kind of thing and then ask it some questions. So it's not like today, obviously, because I didn't imagine we would have Bluetooth and like speakers and Alexas and stuff like that, but it's similar. And I thought that was really interesting. And I also thought was really interesting is that he talks about how he still had not got used to the idea that the city fathers overheard everything one said, everywhere and all the time. Get used to it. Among many other things, the city was their laboratory in human psychology, which in turn enabled them to answer such questions. So I thought that was really interesting, how it's a learning AI, and I thought that was kind of cool. Because it's not talked about much in depth. It's kind of like little things like that are dotted here and there. There was also an interesting thing I wanted to bring up. So there's this woman, I'll talk about her in a minute. So she says, I wanted to be a composer, but the city fathers had never heard of a successful woman composer, and it's hard to argue with that kind of charge. What I found really interesting about this is that there were a lot of really successful women composers. It's just that their work was stolen by their brothers and husbands and fathers and things like that. If you look into like Vivaldi and Mozart and stuff like that, all of them, was it Vivaldi whose sister actually like wrote most of his stuff and then he just took it? Like you can look it up, like look up, women's work stolen composers, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting that the AI wasn't imparted with that information. So yeah, it just shows how, AI only gives you what we put into it. And I thought that was, obviously that was not the intention of the author, but I thought that was cool how that actually is relevant to today. Moving on, New Worlds, no. Cyberpunk, no. Blatant sexism. Aside from calling woman an old harpy, which is actually funny, no, there's not really any blatant sexism at all. There is a woman pilot mentioned, but there are only 2 women in the entire book. One is Carla, Chris's foster mom, who has like 2 lines, and the other one is that doctor I just mentioned. So the doctor... The one assigned to Chris, a stocky, fierce, white-haired woman named Dr. Helena Brazier, was far and away the best teacher Chris had ever encountered in his life, and far and away the worst taskmaster. So, she shows him a bunch of, like, math, and I was like, what is this in here for? And then Carla actually is the best line of the book, aside from that popcorn thing. She says, so her husband is the cop, and she says, Carla banged a coffee cup angrily into the saucer. Pretty close? Joel, all this male expertise is a pain in the neck. Chris is right, and you know it. I agree. Male expertise is a pain in the neck. Reptile aliens. No LGBT+, no black holes, no microfiche, no male MC is a dick. Chris is a nice boy. No post-apocalyptic. Wild weapons and inventions. Yes, the spin daisies. So the spin daisies are basically just giant fans that like propel the entire city off the ground. There is a whole explanation, but it's actually really boring. I mean, I'm more interested in politics, obviously, so I'm going to read that, but I'm not going to read the text stuff to you. And we also have the anti-death drugs. So you get these when you become a citizen of the space city. If you aren't granted citizenship, you're just a passenger who lives a normal lifespan. I thought that was cool, because that was a big thing about Chris. He wanted to become a citizen of one of these cities so he could get the anti-aging drugs. There's a whole talk about kind of like when you get them at the wrong age. So if you take them when you're like 70, you're going to be an old person. So you're going to have all the old person complaints and aches and pains and stuff, versus if you took it when you're like 25. So I thought that's touched on. It's not really like talked about in depth. Racial equality. No. There is a weird line, but I'm not going to read it because it's kind of awkward. My Possession, no. Galactic War, no. No Time Travel, no Bechdel Test, no Alien Human Romance, female main character, or Derelict Ship. Yeah, so not a lot in this book, but some interesting things to talk about, and clearly lots of politics that I really liked. So yeah, thanks for checking that out, and I'll be back next month with another classic sci-fi bingo review thing.